The first thing the galaxy learned about humanity was that humans were weak. At least, that's what they thought. When humanity first joined the Galactic Coalition, they were technologically behind most interstellar civilizations. Their ships were smaller. Their weapons were simpler. Their fleets were tiny compared to the massive armadas controlled by ancient alien empires. To the rest of the galaxy, humanity looked like a young species that had barely crawled out of its cradle. They were wrong. Very wrong. But it would take a war crime for the galaxy to understand just how wrong they were. The First Contact War. Humanity had only been part of the coalition for 12 years when the war began. The enemy was a ruthless empire known as the Carthix Dominion. The Carthix were tall, insectoid beings with armored exoskeletons and a culture built entirely around conquest. They believed that only the strong deserved to exist, and they had spent centuries conquering star systems across the outer sectors. To them, war wasn't a tragedy. It was a sport. And when they discovered human territory along the coalition's frontier, they saw it as easy prey. Human colonies were scattered across a handful of systems, many of them young and barely defended. The Dominion believed a quick strike would crush the new species before the coalition could respond. So they invaded. The first attack came without warning. A fleet of Carthix warships emerged from hyperspace above the colony world of HFY 4. The colony had barely 50,000 inhabitants, scientists, miners, farmers, and their families. There were no military ships in orbit. No defenses. No warning. The Dominion fleet opened fire immediately. Orbital bombardment rained down on cities, farms, and infrastructure. Within minutes, entire settlements were reduced to molten glass. Coalition law strictly forbade attacking civilian colonies without military presence. But the Carthix didn't care. To them, humans were just another weak species to be erased. By the time coalition forces arrived 2 days later, HFY 4 was silent. 50,000 civilians were dead. Not one survivor remained. The galaxy watched the footage in horror. Even in a universe familiar with war, there were still rules. And the Carthix had broken them. Humanity's response. The coalition expected outrage. They expected protests. They expected humanity to demand justice. What they didn't expect was silence. For 3 days, humanity said nothing. No speeches. No diplomatic protests. No declarations. The human ambassador simply delivered a short message to the Coalition Council. We are aware of the situation. Humanity will respond appropriately. That was all. Some species thought the humans were afraid. Others believed humanity lacked the strength to retaliate. After all, the Dominion's fleets were massive. Their warships were among the most powerful in known space. Humanity's navy, by comparison, was tiny. But there was one thing the coalition didn't fully understand about humans. Humans followed rules. Strict rules. Rules about warfare. Rules about protecting civilians. Rules about mercy. Rules that had been written centuries earlier on their homeworld after the darkest wars in their history. Those rules existed for a reason. Because without them, humans knew exactly what they were capable of becoming. And the Carthix Dominion had just broken every single one of them. The Human War Doctrine. 3 weeks after the destruction of HFY 4, humanity officially entered the war. Not with speeches. Not with diplomacy. But with fleets. The human navy deployed every warship it possessed. From the coalition's perspective, it wasn't impressive. 32 warships. That was the entirety of humanity's combat fleet. The Dominion, by comparison, had thousands. The Carthix commanders laughed when they received the intelligence reports. One of their admirals even broadcast a message across the coalition communication network. Let the humans come. Their tiny fleet will make excellent target practice. The Dominion expected a quick victory. What they didn't realize was that humanity had spent centuries perfecting something the rest of the galaxy barely understood. Total war strategy. Humans had studied conflict for thousands of years. They had fought world wars, civil wars, and wars that nearly destroyed their entire species. And from those brutal lessons, they had developed a terrifying understanding of warfare. Humans didn't fight wars to win battles. They fought wars to end enemies. Completely. The first battle. The first major engagement occurred in the Carthix border system of Threxel. The Dominion had stationed a defensive fleet of 60 warships there to guard their territory, twice the size of the entire human navy. When human ships arrived, the Carthix commanders were confident the battle would last less than an hour. Then the fighting started. At first, everything seemed normal. Human ships exchanged fire with Dominion vessels. Missiles streaked across space. Energy weapons lit up the darkness. But then something strange happened. The human fleet retreated. The Carthix commanders assumed they had already won. They pursued the fleeing ships without hesitation. That was the moment the trap closed. Human ships suddenly reversed course and began transmitting targeting data across the system. Seconds later, hundreds of previously undetected objects activated. The Carthix scanners erupted with alerts. Minefields. Massive ones. Human engineers had secretly deployed thousands of cloaked mines across the system before the battle even began. When the Dominion fleet charged forward, they flew directly into them. Explosions rippled through the formation. Warships vanished in nuclear fire. Entire squadrons were wiped out within seconds. Before the Carthix commanders could recover, the human fleet attacked again. But this time their tactics were different. Human ships moved with precise coordination, striking damaged vessels and targeting weak points in the enemy formation. Within 20 minutes, the Dominion fleet was shattered. 42 Carthix warships were destroyed. The rest fled. Human losses? 3 ships. The galaxy watched the battle recordings in disbelief. The humans had just destroyed a fleet twice their size. And they had done it with terrifying efficiency. The war escalates. The Carthix Dominion quickly realized something was wrong. Humans weren't fighting like normal coalition species. They weren't honorable. They weren't predictable. They used deception, ambushes, and psychological warfare. Human fleets appeared where they weren't expected. Supply lines vanished. Communication relays were sabotaged. Entire Dominion outposts disappeared overnight. But the most disturbing thing was that humans were careful. Extremely careful. They targeted military infrastructure. Warships. Weapons factories. Supply depots. Civilian areas were left untouched. Even Carthix civilians were spared. Human commanders strictly followed the laws of war. And that confused the Dominion. Because to them mercy was weakness. So they escalated. The second war crime. 6 months into the war, the Dominion launched another attack. This time against a human medical station orbiting the neutral world of Violates. The station treated wounded soldiers from multiple coalition species. It was clearly marked. Protected under coalition law. And completely unarmed. The Carthix destroyed it anyway. Thousands of wounded soldiers and medical staff died. When the footage reached Earth, humanity finally spoke. A broadcast was sent across every coalition communication channel. The message was delivered by Admiral Elias Carter, commander of the United Terran Fleet. His voice was calm, cold, controlled. You have committed war crimes against humanity. You attacked civilians. You destroyed a medical facility. You murdered the wounded. There was a long pause. Then he continued. Humanity has followed the laws of war. We have shown restraint. We have given you the mercy our history taught us to offer. Another pause. That mercy is now over. The change. The next phase of the war shocked the entire galaxy. Because humanity changed. Completely. The new human strategy was terrifying. Instead of fighting Dominion fleets head-on, humans targeted infrastructure. Shipyards vanished. Fuel depots exploded. Communication networks collapsed. Entire Dominion supply chains were dismantled piece by piece. Human stealth ships infiltrated deep into enemy territory. Cyber warfare crippled military command systems. Artificial intelligence viruses spread through Dominion networks, disrupting fleet coordination. Humanity wasn't just fighting battles anymore. They were dismantling an empire. Slowly. Systematically. And the Dominion had no idea how to stop it. The final confrontation. 2 years after the war began, the Dominion capital system was surrounded. Not by a massive armada. But by something far more terrifying. A blockade. Human fleets had cut off every supply route into the system. No fuel. No food shipments. No reinforcements. The Dominion's mighty military machine began collapsing under its own weight. When Admiral Carter transmitted his final message to the Dominion leadership, the entire galaxy listened. You believed humans were weak. You believed war crimes would break us. You believed mercy meant vulnerability. His voice grew colder. You were wrong. The Dominion surrendered 3 days later. The aftermath. The war ended with a treaty unlike any other in galactic history. The Carthix Dominion was dismantled. Its military was disarmed. Its conquered systems were liberated. And the leaders responsible for the war crimes were placed on trial before the coalition. Humanity insisted on it. Because humans still believed in rules. Even after everything. Even after war. The galaxy learned something important from the conflict. Humans weren't the strongest species. They weren't the most advanced. But they were something far more dangerous. A species that understood war better than anyone else. A species that created laws of war not because they were weak, but because they knew exactly what would happen if those laws disappeared. And the Carthix Dominion had learned that lesson the hard way. They had committed war crimes against humanity, and they had awakened the one species in the galaxy that truly understood how to end a war. Forever.